Notice that Snowden has had zero to say about this, right? For Snowden, if it comes in the mail, right, if it's this old-fashioned low-tech, doesn't matter. But here we have a tremendous abuse, the national security letter. No court, no warrant, no judge, not even a FISA court, nothing. Just the FBI acting on whatever they think is convincing, and then a gag order for you, right? If the NSA taps your phone, you can at least go into the public square and say, hey, NSA, stop tapping my phone. But with this other stuff, you're going to get sanctioned, right? You're facing criminal penalties, quite possibly, for this stuff. So isn't it interesting how one-sided and how misleading Snowden can be? Now, let's also just look at a couple of things about Snowden that have come forward. I guess I have to do this now because Snowden has, Greenwald, the successful entrepreneur, has mentioned me as his principal adversary. Here's an interesting one. The Risk of Trusting the Snowden Story, January 12th, by Kevin Ryan. Now, Kevin Ryan is a guy who sort of does the engineering approach to 9/11. He's somebody who's been attacking the official story of 9/11 for these dozen or more years. And he's very suspicious about Snowden. And we'll go through some of those suspicions in a minute. We'll learn about the true hoo-ha in India. That would be Snowden in India. Back in a minute. Welcome to this week's edition of World Crisis Radio, second hour. Webster Tarpley here in Washington, D.C. And we've been looking certainly at the very interesting pattern of diplomatic shifts on the eve of the conference in Geneva about Syria. But now we got to move on to Ed Snowden. Let's talk a little bit about Snowden. And again, I've sort of got to do the heavy lifting on this because Glenn Greenwald, that very wealthy entrepreneur of the information world, has singled me out. My article of June of last year talking about limited hangout operations. He's promoted me essentially, or recognized me, I guess, as the source of much of the skepticism about Snowden in the world. Well, it's spreading. So here's Kevin Ryan, who at least comes along on this. He talks about Snowden. What do we know about Edward Snowden? He was a Special Forces recruit in the U.S. Army, a National Security Agency employee, a National Security Agency contractor for at least two different companies, and a CIA employee undercover. All of this occurred in the span of only a few years. He was able to command a six-figure salary despite having no education beyond the high school equivalency certification. Of the many positions Snowden held in a period of approximately 6 years, the most long-lived appears to have been his work with the Central Intelligence Agency, that's the CIA, where the 20-something spy was, in his own words, a senior advisor. So he's been asked about his background and motives and says, I'm just another guy. He went on to say that his leaking NSA secrets was what we needed to know, and it's all you need to know. The New York Times is presenting Snowden in an increasingly favorable light. And, of course, Greenwald has made a deal with the owner of PayPal Corporation. According to Ryan, the company whose former executives now produce the technology used for domestic spying. The biggest hurdle to understanding the Snowden story has been the emotional reaction to asking questions about it. Those who have dared to question the story have been met with ridicule and misplaced condemnation. And Kevin Ryan mentions Naomi Wolf and Sybil Edmonds. Strangely, he doesn't recognize, he doesn't join Greenwald in singling me out, but that's all right. Right? Not everybody can be a hero every day of the week. And, of course, Greenwald needs to answer some questions, too. Greenwald says, of course, that he's got masses of other documents which he's withholding. Do we trust Greenwald, who is now part of a for-profit venture with this guy Almadar? I don't see why you would, given what we know about the corrosive effects of huge sums of money. The other thing that we have, which I urge you to take a look at, an article here in Foreign Policy magazine, and this is about the spying mission of Edward Snowden in India. What was Edward Snowden doing in India? Why was he taking classes in ethical hacking by Shane Harris, January 13th? So there he was 3 years before he became famous. He went to New Delhi, India, took 6 days of computer courses, not just computer courses, but courses in computer hacking and programming. And this was done at the Koenig School, Koenig or ING, I guess, depending on the place in the text where you find it. Snowden talked to these people at the Koenig School in New Delhi about Stateroom. Stateroom is a program which gathers electronic communications using equipment based in U.S. embassies all over the world. You don't need Snowden for that, by the way. You go and look at any U.S. embassy around the world. Look at the forest of antennas and domes and so forth, radomes on the top of the roof, and you'll see that they're doing all of that. So what did he do there? He was also working with the U.S. Embassy in New Delhi, and it looks like it's Koenig most of the time, although not all of the time in this article. He was there, and he was interested above all in the analysis and reverse engineering of malicious computer codes, Zeus, Fragus, and Spy Eye. This is all crimeware kits. Zeus is the world's premier toolbox for custom building online crime campaigns. It has been used to infect millions of computers around the world. Spy Eye allows the criminal to fake a bank website to trick people into entering their login and password, which the criminal then uses to enter and empty their bank accounts. Microsoft has filed a civil complaint against Zeus. Anyway, what was he doing in India? And, of course, we have this the story about the Indian diplomat in New York City, right? The Indian diplomat is accused of fraud in regard to her domestic servant. What our conclusion seems to be here, with the help of some international sources, is that this was an attempt by the Central Intelligence Agency to recruit this Indian consular official in New York and use her for espionage operations against the Indian government. This is the Devyan Khobragade flap. Devyan, Devyani Khobragade, Devyani Khobragade. And it's a failed attempt, as I wrote on Twitter earlier this week, a failed attempt to recruit an Indian diplomat as a spy. And you can see the write-up on the always very interesting Russian website, Strategic Culture. So it looks like Ed Snowden was somehow a part of this, right? And, of course, when he was on the Ars Technica website, he was gallivanting and cavorting as the true hoo-ha, and he was demanding that his current ally, Assange, be shot in the genitals as a result of those revelations that Snowden had made. So this is all getting more and more smelly, and I would say if people want to mount some kind of a campaign, based on what Obama says this morning, Obama's going to do nothing, right? The metadata goes on, the mass collection of data, big data, that all continues, data mining, whatever you want to call it. Obama's not going to do anything against this. And what it shows is if you're concerned with reform in these areas, forget Snowden. Snowden is not going to bring you reform, and Obama's not going to bring you reform. You need something more like the tax Wall Street party that would have, I believe, the intellectual and moral courage and strength to stand up against these pressures, because they're all making excuses for Obama. Oh, well, when you become president and you see what's really going on, then it looks all very different. I would also fault Russia Today, RT Today. Their first 2 or 3 stories were all about Snowden, right? Their attempt to function as the Snowden cult or groupies for Snowden. They needed to focus on the Syrian developments, on the Geneva Conference for Syria and what can be done about that. And if you're here in the United States, whether your phone is being tapped is an abstract question. You get one of those national security letters, you know it, and that much scarier, much worse. Got to reform that. Back in a minute.